Thank you for coming to the McWaters Effect. I'm your host, Matt. Today we're going to be talking about Ronald Reagan and UFOs. But first I need you to hit like and subscribe. Helps the channel grow. Now let's get on with the show. Now first I want to talk about the background of Reagan. Reagan was an actor in Hollywood from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Then he got into politics and became governor of California from 1967 to 1974. And then he ran for president in 1976, challenged Ford for the nomination. Ford won. And then in 1980, he got the nomination and beat Carter to become the 40th president of the United States. And he was president for 8 years after that. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what does Reagan have anything to do with UFOs? I'm glad you asked. Well, he has had 2 encounters with UFOs, and I'm going to go over the stories now. And also I want to go over some of the conversations he's had with other people, as well as the speech he did at the UN. Now, this first story takes place in the 1950s. And whenever Reagan was on his way to a party, he was in Hollywood at the time, he was on his way to a party with his wife, Nancy. Well, supposedly he saw a UFO. He actually told two people about it. Lucille Ball from the I Love Lucy show, as well as Steve Allen about it. And they both have talked about it, about his sighting after his death, and also in Lucille Ball's memoir, she has a story about it. See, when the party started, he was late. No one could figure out what was going on until he shows up, and then he tells some people about it. Now, later on, Shirley MacLaine tells a story that Lucille Ball told her that Reagan was on his way to the party. He saw something, so he stopped, and him and Nancy got out of the car. Well, supposedly the spaceship landed on the ground, and aliens got out of the spacecraft, went up to Reagan, and said, "You need to quit acting and go into politics." Then got back into the spaceship and left. Now, first thing you gotta realize, Shirley MacLaine, when she told this story, she was in her later years. And the other thing is, when it comes to Lucille Ball, she's a comedian. She probably embellished that part just to fuck with people. Now, do I believe that? I believe when it comes to the story, I believe about a third of it. I believe he probably did see something, and so did his wife. But the whole landing on the ground and telling him he needs to quit acting and going to politics, that's a little far-fetched. Now, this next story has actually someone that witnessed it with him. 3 other people. It was in 1974. He was flying on a Cessna plane. It was a 4-seater, and it was at night. Well, he had 2 bodyguards, and he had a pilot there named Bill Painter. Now, Bill Painter had a lot of flight experience, 30,000 hours. So he's no slouch, and he knows exactly what he's looking at. Well, one of Reagan's guards looks off the side, and he sees a bright light. Reagan looks, and he asks the pilot, "What's that?" Well, they're looking at it, and this is the pilot's account. He said it was cigar-shaped, bright, and it was moving at pretty good speed, and all of a sudden, it just takes off. It just takes at a 45-degree angle and just disappears. And Reagan says it didn't behave like a plane or a helicopter would. It behaved more like a hot rod, like you're at a standstill and 60 seconds later you're down the track going 60, 70 miles an hour. It was more like that, except it was a whole lot faster. That's what he compared it to. Now, but a week later, he went to a forum, and he was telling a reporter about this. The reporter's name is Norman C. Miller from the Washington bureau chief of Wall Street Journal about his encounter. Miller didn't seem to believe him or anything. Well, Reagan kind of clammed up, and then he never discussed the incident after that. Now, this happens pretty regularly when people meet someone that has completely don't understand what they're talking about and don't believe what they're saying. And my thing is Reagan telling people this stuff, if it wasn't true, why would he tell people about that? Because stuff like this puts a bad stigma on you, especially back in those days. People look at you like you're a freak. It could ruin your career. Obviously, it didn't ruin Reagan's. He became president, but could have. And so I think that's why he clammed up. Reagan was so concerned about UFOs, he actually brought it up at a meeting he had with Gorbachev in 1985. Now, when he was with Gorbachev, it was during a press conference, and they were also on Oval Office press was there, and then they decided to go for a walk without any press. All they had was just them two and the translator. Now, later on, Gorbachev tells the story of what happened in this interaction when they were on this walk. From the fireside house, President Reagan suddenly said to me, "What would you do if the United States were suddenly attacked by someone from outer space? Would you help us?" I said, "No doubt about it." And he said, "We too." That's interesting. Now, what I find interesting about this conversation is 2 years later, Reagan has a speech at the UN, and it is very oddly similar to the question he posed to Gorbachev in this conversation. Now, we know this conversation actually happened because not only did Gorbachev said it happened, but so did the translator. Now, I have video of the speech, and I'd like you to listen to it.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
Now, when you watch that video, a lot of alien enthusiasts and ufologists believe that this is proof that presidents know about aliens and Roswell and stuff like that. I believe it was just something he's trying to convey in the idea of unifying the world to be more peaceful and so on and so forth. Now, I believe that was also his intent when he was asking Gorbachev the same question. If we're willing to join together against an existential threat, why can't we join together now when there isn't one? I believe that's what that speech and his question to Gorbachev had to do with. I don't believe it had anything to do with aliens. Now, do I believe he actually believed what he saw was an alien spacecraft? That remains to be seen. I mean, I don't know. When you hear his sons go and talk on like Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, they don't even mention anything about it because, as far as I know, he never told them anything about it. I'll say the reason is because all the stigma that is around it. Now, his wife would talk about it. And of course, anybody know anything about Nancy Reagan, she don't care. And the reason she don't care, she actually believes in ghosts, and she did seances when she was in Hollywood and stuff like that. She was a very interesting character back in Hollywood when they were in California. Even as they were in the White House, people found her pretty interesting when they talked to her about supernatural stuff. The reason I wanted to do this story is because, first thing, Reagan's one of my favorite presidents. And I found him interesting, especially when it comes to his past, being a former actor and going into politics, why he did that, and also when he was a president and how the Berlin Wall fell at the time it was pretty much the end of communism in Russia. I find his story compelling. And then later on in life, after he leaves the presidency, he gets dementia. Most people believe he actually had dementia or Alzheimer's when he was last couple of years as president, which if that would be the case, let's say Joe Biden has that. He wouldn't be the first one. Now, I want to let you guys know every Wednesday and Saturday, I'll be putting a story out about aliens and supernatural stuff. Please check it out. And just remember, hit like and subscribe. Helps the channel grow. Peace.